healed by the dragon, the midnight storm rolled off the western peaks like a bruised, groaning beast, and Kaelen rode its churning winds with effortless power. Lightning sheeted around his wings, gilding every scale in molten silver. For centuries he had watched mortals flee or charge, tremble or roar, when they felt the thunder of his passage. Tonight he expected nothing different. Knights would polish their helms and boast, would promise bards they would bring back his heart. Young aerial riders would whisper that they were meant to master him. The last of the mountain drakes, none ever returned. So when a new scent drifted upward, thin as thread but bright as winter jasmine, Kaelen angled one wing and spiraled lower in cautious curiosity. Rain hammered the spruce canopy. Wind flung needles through the air like emerald daggers. Yet amid the darkness he saw a lone figure in a ruined clearing far below, small and motionless beside a toppled stone. She did not raise a torch or brandish steel. She did not even look up. She simply lay curled upon her side, a sodden scrap of gray cloth plastered to limbs so slight he wondered if the storm might crack her bones before he arrived. Something inside him tightened, a note of dissonance he had not felt in ages. Pity was a human luxury. Dragons did not stoop to it. Still, his tail lashed the wind as if propelled by its own will. Kaelen folded his wings and dropped, talons extended. The gale roared around him, but she did not flinch. Only when he landed with earth-shaking force did her eyes open. Their color was the pale blue of rain-washed sky, impossibly calm. She gazed at the claws that could have torn her apart, and then at his fanged maw where steam coiled through the downpour. "Just make it quick," she whispered, voice no louder than falling ash. For the first time in 500 years, Kaelen felt words lodge in his throat. He smelled her fear. Yes, but it was old, worn thin by repetition. Nothing like the sharp spice of warriors who faced him to earn glory. Beneath it lay exhaustion so profound it tasted like ashes. Rainwater trickled along the jagged welts on her arms and legs. In the silver flicker of lightning, he saw those welts were scars, layer upon layer, as if each blow life dealt her had been struck upon the same canvas. He lowered his great horned head until one luminous gold eye filled her trembling vision. "You seek death?" The rumble of his voice churned the puddles at her feet. "I seek an ending," she replied. "The villagers said I must take a golden scale from the dragon or never return. But I have no knife, no strength, no home left to flee to. If you would kill me, do it. I promised them I would not turn back." A fork of lightning tore the sky, illuminating the raw outline of every wound across her shoulders. Kaelen's wing membranes shivered. He withdrew half a step and studied the broken stone crouched over her. It was a shrine marker once dedicated to an old mountain goddess. Tumbled now, forgotten, a grave for faith. How fitting. She coughed, brutal and wet. The storm was soaking through to her marrow. She would die before dawn, whether he touched her or not. And yet, he thought, she begged the goddess of dragons to claim her quickly rather than brave another hour among her own kind. Kaelen inhaled, the slow breath of an ancient furnace. His magic stirred, bringing with it memories of other ages, of treaties, of friendships, of love. Humans had long since taught him not to believe in such alliances, but perhaps this one broken mortal might teach him something different. With a bellowing hiss that rattled the trees, he folded his wings around himself. Scales slid over scales, bones reknit, shrank, reshaped. In a swirl of ember-tinted sparks, he stood as a tall man with obsidian hair and golden eyes, bare-chested save for a mantle of faintly shivering scales along his shoulders. Steam rose from his skin in the cold rain. His feet were bare against the mud, yet each toe still ended in a subtle talon. When he knelt beside her, the storm seemed to hesitate, thunder softening to a distant growl. She tried to push herself upright, flinched at the effort, and crumpled again. Her lips were nearly blue. He slid an arm beneath her knees and lifted her with impossible gentleness. She weighed as little as a wounded bird. Even so, She tensed, expecting claws or fangs to finish what the villagers had begun. "Easy," he said, voice now deep but unmistakably human. "We are leaving this storm." Her lashes stuck together in the rain. "Why?" "Because I refuse to bury the only creature tonight who has not lied about her intent." She made a sound like laughter broken in half. He gathered her closer, fanning invisible wings of magic, and launched skyward with a single leap. Wind knifed around them, but he held a sphere of warmth against her skin until they pierced the cloud bed. Minutes later, they landed on a ledge of black basalt halfway up the mountain's hidden face. Firelight flickered beyond the arch of an ancient cavern. The cave mouth was wide enough for his true form, yet its interior glowed with a hearth's rich amber, the scent of aged pine resin curling out to greet them. Kaelen carried her through echoing stone halls where crystals pulsed faintly in the walls. He set her on a mound of furs beside the hearth. Flames crackled, casting gold across her wet hair. Rainwater dripped from her shift, pooling at her feet. She stared at the fire like someone studying proof that warmth still existed. "What is your name?" he asked as he knelt and stirred the logs with a wrought iron poker. "Aelira," she murmured. "It means windborn, though I have never flown." "I am Kaelen," he said simply. He did not add titles or legends. Those tasted bitter on his tongue tonight. She touched a gash on her forearm, fresh and angry. "The healer in my village said no wound of mine would ever close clean. She said misfortune sinks into my blood." Kaelen watched crimson bead along her skin. Beneath the thin cloth of her shift he saw dozens more. White ridges, ragged seams, bruises gone yellow at the edges. Fury smoldered in his chest, hot enough to melt the stone around them, yet he kept his voice low. "They lied to you, all wounds can mend with care." "No one cares," she whispered. "I do." He rose. From a cedar cabinet he withdrew folded linens and a simple wool tunic. He passed them to her without comment. "This is dry. Change. I will not look." Aelira's breath hitched. She clutched the clothes as if they might vanish. "Thank you." He turned to the hearth, giving her his broad back, though he could still sense every nervous heartbeat behind him. She peeled away the soaked shift, wincing when the fabric tugged at healing scabs. A low growl built in his chest at the sight of lash lines crossing her narrow spine, but he kept his hands knotted around the iron poker until the fire flared violet, burning out his anger before it harmed her. Finally, she whispered, "I am done." Kaelen turned. The tunic hung past her knees. The sleeves rolled twice over delicate wrists. Embers threw honeyed light over her cheeks, and for the first time he saw something like life shining behind her eyes. Yet her scars remained stark, cruel reminders etched in living flesh. "May I help you?" he asked. "How?" He knelt and opened one hand, palm up. A faint glimmer rose from beneath the skin like candlelight behind alabaster. "There is magic in dragon blood. It can mend what steel has marred. The old treaties forbade us from gifting it freely. Men grew greedy. But if you wish it, I offer it to you alone." Aelira's fingers hovered above his palm. "Will it hurt?" "No, it will be warm, as sunstone is warm long after dusk." She brushed his skin. Golden light burst outward, soft as dawn, weaving luminous threads around every scar. She gasped as the heat sank deeper, not burning, but blossoming, filling hollows of despair she'd forgotten existed. The ruined flesh smoothed like silk under gentle hands. The ache in her ribs eased. The throb in her ankle faded. Tears blurred her vision even as she watched her old hurts dissolve in the glow. When the light dimmed, Kaelen remained exactly as he was, yet his shoulders trembled. Healing another cost him strength, but the greater ache lay in imagining how many nights she had endured such pain in silence. He drew a steadying breath. Aelira stared at her arms, turning them over. Only faint shadows of the worst wounds remained, shiny pink beneath the firelight. "I am whole." "You always were," he said. "Now the world may see it." Sudden sobs broke from her chest. She did not weep prettily, each breath hitched as if dragged across broken glass. Kaelen sat beside her without touching. Dragons did not presume, and waited until her tears slowed. At last she shifted closer and leaned her head against his shoulder. Her hair smelled of rain and smoke and something fragile, like violets cresting through frost. "I don't understand kindness," she whispered. "Neither do I," he admitted. "But perhaps we can learn together." She let her weight rest more fully against him, trusting the strength coiled beneath his human guise. Silence stretched, broken only by fire pops and distant thunder. In that hush, Kaelen's heart beat not as a war drum but as a steady hearth bell. "Tell me about the village," he said at last. "Rildewick," she answered. A clutch of houses around a dying pear orchard. They blamed the blight on me. When hail ruined the harvest, they blamed me again. I was born on a night like this. My mother died of fever after, and superstition was easier than grief. "How long have they hurt you?" "As long as I can remember. A bruise fades, another forms. Hard work is nothing. Isolation is worse. I thought if I proved useful, I might belong. When they demanded I fetch your scale, I realized they would always find a new torment. So I walked into the storm and hoped it would swallow me." Kaelen exhaled ember-scented breath. "They sent a lamb to a slaughterhouse and called it justice." Aelira lifted her gaze. "But you did not slaughter me." "I collect treasure," he said, touching a lock of her hair with reverence. "Tonight I found the rarest jewel." Color rose in her cheeks, faint but glowing. She reached to trace the subtle tendril marks along his collarbone, scales caught between shapes. "Does it burden you to be both dragon and man?" "It burdens me to choose nothing but solitude," he murmured. "Yet that was safer. For us both. Perhaps the safe path has ended." She smiled, tentative and bright as a candle in fieldstone darkness. Before either spoke again, a chill wind skimmed the cave mouth, rattling the crystal veins. Kaelen's head snapped up. He rose, every sense flaring. "What is it?" Aelira asked. "Humans," he said, voice now edged with iron. "They climb the lower slope. Several hearts pound with fear and malice alike." Her newly healed fingers curled around his sleeve. "They will want proof I died. If they see me alive, they may try again." "They will not take you," he promised, "and stay by the fire." He strode down the tunnel, body shifting as he went, scales rippling back into dominance. By the time he reached the cavern's outer arch, his wings brushed the ceiling. He stepped into the rain as a titan of onyx and ember. Below, torchlights flickered among pines. 6, maybe 7 men, cloaks soaked, swords drawn though they shook. Their leader shouted a clumsy challenge, voice drowned by thunder. Kaelen's molten eyes narrowed. At his rear, the mountain rumbled as if it too growled. One man raised a crossbow trembling in his hands. Kaelen let his chest plates separate, letting white fire gather behind his fangs. Then he remembered Aelira's plea. No more death. Instead, he flexed his wings and plunged off the ledge, sweeping low. The gale of his passage snuffed every torch in an instant, plunging the mountainside into blackness. Men screamed, stumbling into mud and roots. He did not strike or burn. He merely circled once, letting the hurricane of his wings send them sprawling. "Leave," he thundered, voice vibrating the stone. "She is under my protection. Come again and the sky itself will fall upon you." They scrambled, half-blind, sliding down scree and slick moss. Kaelen followed until their scent faded with distance and terror. Satisfied, he soared back to the ledge and tucked his wings, flame guttering to embers behind his teeth. Inside, he found Aelira standing exactly where he left her, though worry etched her brow. Relief washed through her features when she saw him unharmed. "You didn't kill them," she said softly. "I gave them a kindness they never offered you." She touched his massive foreleg, scales hot beneath her palm. "Thank you." Kaelen shifted once more, form shrinking until he stood beside her in human guise. Rain still beaded along his shoulders, shimmering like liquid starlight. "They may return," he warned. "Then we face them together," she answered. A smile curved his lips, new, uncertain, yet fiercely alive. "Come. Warmth awaits." He guided her back to the hearth, but she stopped him with a gentle tug. Her hand slipped into his, their fingers lacing. Blush dusted her cheeks, yet she did not look away. "Kaelen," she whispered, "may I stay?" "As long as mountains stand," he replied. She rose onto her toes. The fire's glow painted ribbons in her damp hair as she pressed closer. Their breaths mingled, rain scent and dragon flame. His arm encircled her waist, careful, mindful of newfound skin unscarred. Her lips parted on a quiet exhale. They met in a kiss delicate as first light upon snow, yet beneath it burned a promise older than the storm outside. When they broke apart, Aelira rested her forehead against his, tears shining like dew. "No one ever stood for me," she murmured. "No one ever saw me." He answered, "Until you." The hush that followed seemed as vast as the cavern itself. Outside, rain softened to a damp hush on mossy stone, and distant thunder rolled away toward the lowlands. Kaelen drew Aelira back to the hearth, yet neither of them sat. They lingered in the warm half-glow, hands still entwined, as if the simple magic of touching might vanish if they dared let go. "I feel different," she said after a moment, flexing her fingers and gazing at the unscarred skin. "Not just my body. Inside, it is like someone opened every shutter and let the air in." "That is how the soul recognizes hope," Kaelen answered. "Hope breathes, even when it surprises us." She gave a shy laugh, one hand pressing to her chest. "And you, do you feel any weaker? You poured so much of yourself into the healing." "I feel lighter," he admitted. "I do not often use that gift. The cost lies not in strength but in memory. I must remember why humanity is worth saving each time I share it. Tonight you showed me." A flicker of wonder crossed her face. "I did?" "Yes. Most who stand before me are driven by vanity or fear. You carried only truth. Truth is rarer than gold." Her cheeks warmed and she ducked her head. "Gold still helps," she teased, surprising herself with the spark of humor. Kaelen's laughter rumbled low. "Then we shall find you gold aplenty." He gestured toward a dark passage that sloped deeper beneath the mountain. "Come. I wish to show you something." She followed, barefoot on the polished stone. Small crystal veins along the walls brightened as they walked, recognizing the presence of dragon blood. After a dozen winding steps, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Aelira gasped. Treasure lay heaped in gentle, gleaming dunes. Coins hammered by forgotten empires, chalices studded with opals, polished helms, strings of pearls, vellum scrolls, and armor inlaid with moonstone. Yet it was not the wealth that silenced her. The hoard was arranged in delicate spirals, artful arcs, and careful little towers. Between each curve stood curiosities: a child's wooden whistle, a single tarnished locket, a cracked porcelain cup. Kaelen spoke softly behind her. "Each piece belonged to someone who once mattered. Kings think dragons crave riches for their worth, but coins mean little to me. I keep what is lost, so the memory of its owner remains. Look." He knelt and lifted a slender ring carved from river amber. Inside the band, words were etched in tiny runes. "Mira, beloved of Joss," he read aloud. "I found that ring in a ruin 2 centuries ago. When I touched it, I sensed the love carved into the stone. The world forgot Mira and Joss, but down here their promise stays alive." Aelira traced the ring with reverent fingers. "You are a keeper of stories." Kaelen's golden eyes brightened. "Perhaps that is a better title than the ones mortals give me." They wandered between the treasure arcs, Rustling coins sounded like tiny bells underfoot. Aelira paused beside a battered kite shield painted with a faded red wolf. "This belonged to someone brave," she said, palm hovering over the wolf's shape. "An unnamed guardsman," Kaelen replied. "He died defending refugees in a border war. I watched him stand when all others fled. Afterward, I carried his shield here." She swallowed a sudden lump in her throat. "They called you a monster, yet you honor more humanity than the humans who sent me to die." He placed a gentle hand at the small of her back. "Some monsters merely carry sharper mirrors." They continued until the far wall rose like a cliff of crystal, each facet shimmering with inner starlight. In its center, embedded at shoulder height, glowed a single dragon scale the size of a saucer. Unlike the obsidian black of Kaelen's natural plating, this scale shimmered translucent gold, alive with slow pulses of light. Aelira stared entranced. "Is that yours?" "My heart scale," he confirmed. "Dragons shed one only once in our lives. It is the most vulnerable piece of us and the most potent. I keep it here to remind myself that fragility and strength are one." Her voice dropped to a hush. "Why show me?" "Because you spoke of feeling unworthy. Yet you are the first to see this chamber since it was sealed. Your worth is greater than greed or violence could ever measure." Her eyes glistened. Impulsively, she rose on her toes and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "Thank you for trusting me." Heat rippled beneath his skin at the tenderness of the gesture. "Trust is the only treasure I value now." They walked back toward the main cavern, content in silence. When they neared the hearth, Aelira laughed under her breath. "What amuses you?" he asked. "The villagers demanded a scale. I suppose we should give them one just so they cannot say I failed." She lifted a dark curl from her shoulder, playful courage sparkling where fear once lived. "Perhaps you could spare a smaller piece?" Kaelen grinned. "I could, but I think a different gift will silence them more effectively." He crossed to a chest near the wall, lifted its heavy lid and withdrew a delicate torque of silver twined with a single perfect ruby. This belonged to a queen who once forged peace between rival tribes. Her symbol was the mountain rose? Wear this, and any who see you will know you stand beneath royal protection. He draped the torque around Aelira's throat, clasping it carefully. The metal adjusted to her warmth, fitting as if forged for her alone. She touched it with reverence. "It is beautiful, but I fear it makes me look like stolen treasure." "Impossible," he said, voice roughened. "Treasure cannot be stolen when it walks of its own will." She slid her hand into his. "Then I will walk beside you." A gentle hush followed, broken by the distant rumble of falling water deeper in the mountain. It felt as though the cavern itself held its breath around them, waiting for something unnamed. Kaelen realized, with a tremor of wonder, that he too was waiting. For her next smile, her next question, the next hour in which she remained alive beside him. Later, exhaustion tugged at Aelira's limbs. He guided her to a sleeping alcove hidden by a curtain of woven rushes. Thick firs formed a nest beneath a skylight of smoky quartz, through which dawn's first pale glow seeped like diluted honey. She hesitated at the threshold. "Will you stay?" "If you wish." The answer left his lips before he knew he would speak it. She lay down and he settled nearby, one arm curved under her head. For a moment she tensed, old habit, then released a shaky exhale and let herself fit against his heartbeat. Outside, the last gusts of the storm faded. Rain became a whisper. Within minutes, her breathing lengthened into sleep. Kaelen did not sleep. He watched the quartz overhead lighten from gray to soft rose, feeling each pulse of her heart as if it echoed in his own chest. The sensation was disorienting and exquisite, the same way sunlight feels after centuries underground. When at last he drifted into slumber, it was with the certainty that dawn would no longer taste of loneliness. Morning unfurled bright and clean. Aelira woke first, marveling at the warmth wrapped around her. For an instant she thought she lay in a dream. Then she felt the slow, steady rise of Kaelen's chest against her back, and knew every impossible event of the night was true. She turned carefully to study his sleeping face. In human guise he looked not dangerous, but regal and oddly vulnerable, the last glow of embers beneath ash. Her fingertips brushed where faint iridescent scales traced his cheekbones. A smile curved her mouth, small and secret. His eyes opened, golden light met blue. "Good morning," he murmured, voice husky from newly found peace. "I never imagined waking up alive could feel like this," she whispered. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Alive looks beautiful on you." They rose, dressed, and shared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and sweet-dried berries. While they ate, Kaelen outlined what he sensed. The villagers would not attempt another climb soon, but word would spread. Greedier hearts might come. Knights, bounty hunters, opportunists seeking the rumored scale or the girl who charmed a dragon. "We should decide how visible you wish to be," he said, pouring warmed cider into stone cups. "I can cloak these caverns in illusions, or we can face whatever paths the world sends." Aelira considered. "I have hidden my whole life. Hiding kept me alive, but it never let me live. I want to see sky and valley without fear. I want to walk into town someday and buy cloth without cowering, but I do not want you to fight endless battles on my behalf." He offered her a tender half-smile. "Battles come whether we seek them or not. The question is, who we stand beside when they arrive." "Then I will stand beside you," she said, resolute. He inclined his head, honoring her choice. "In that case, we begin by visiting the village. Today." She blinked. "Today? If we let terror ferment, it becomes poison. Better we confront them before rumors distort truth." He set his cup down. "I will not scorch their fields. I will only make it clear they cannot cast out one of their own without consequence." Aelira's stomach fluttered, half nerves, half excitement. "Will you go as dragon or man?" "Both, perhaps." A mischievous glint lit his eyes. "Appear as a man until the moment spectacle is needed." She laughed, marveling at the surreal conversation. "Very well. If I faint, please catch me." "I will." They left by a narrow trail that wound from the ledge through forests sparkling with rain jewels, sunlight tangled in branches still dripping silver threads. Birds began their morning choruses, and somewhere, a hart called softly to its herd. Aelira breathed deep. Each scent, pine, wet earth, wild flowers crushed underfoot, felt like a promise. Twice she stumbled on loose stones. Twice Kaelen steadied her without comment, as though patient with the frailty of newborn fawns. By the time rooftops of Rildewick appeared beyond the orchard, her heartbeat echoed in her ears. Memories crowded behind her eyes. Taunts, thrown stones, long nights sleeping in the straw of the smokehouse. She squeezed Kaelen's hand. "I am afraid," she admitted. "So am I," he said, surprising her. "Not for myself. For the world that will reveal itself in your eyes if it fails you again." Before they entered the main lane, he paused, drew a knife from his belt, and with swift precision sliced a small scale from the underside of his forearm. The scale was no larger than a thumbnail, but when he dropped it into her palm, it shone like a sliver of sunrise. "Carry this openly," he instructed. "It is proof of their bargain. No living knight could boast the same." She tucked the scale against the ruby torque so it glittered at her collarbone. They walked through the village gate. The first farmer they passed went white as chalk, dropping a basket of pears that rolled across the dust. Word spread faster than plague. Doors slammed, shutters banged. A cry of alarm rang from the bell tower. Yet no one attacked. They gathered instead in the square, forming a nervous ring. The elder who had ordered Aelira's exile stepped forward, trembling. You are alive," he croaked. His gaze darted to Kaelen, who had chosen to appear ordinary in travel leathers, though his eyes burned bright. Aelira lifted her chin. "Your task is done. I have brought the dragon scale." She held it up. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The elder swallowed. We assumed. You assumed cruelty would remain hidden? Kaelen interrupted, voice carrying like distant thunder. That assumption ends today. He stepped forward. A hush fell like snowfall. Though in human form he seemed larger than life, shadows bending around him in deference. Sparks glimmered beneath his skin. This woman stands under my protection, he declared. Harm her again, and you will answer to me. Yet she asked mercy for you, and so I spare this village. Remember that mercy when next you judge one of your own. Silence thickened. Several folk dropped to their knees, whether in worship or terror, Aelira could not know. She reached for Kaelen's hand, felt the tension ease under her touch. Together they turned and walked from the square. No one stopped them. Behind, the bell tower remained mute, as though unsure which notes to strike for those who had walked with a dragon and been left alive. Once beyond the orchard, Aelira released a breath she had not realized she held. Kaelen studied her face. Your eyes are clear, he observed. I feel free. She laughed, light and incredulous. I think I shall keep feeling free every day from now on. An excellent practice, he said, smiling. They ascended the mountain path once more, slower, savoring the afternoon sun as it warmed stone and skin. At a high overlook, they paused to watch clouds drift over green valleys. Breeze tugged strands of her hair across his arm, and he tucked them behind her ear. I have something for you, he said, retrieving a small iron tool from his belt. Carefully, he pierced the tiny dragon scale near its tip, threaded it onto a leather cord, and tied the cord around her wrist. The scale flashed rose gold when it caught the sun. Now the world will know whose flame guards your heart, he said. She traced the scale, then rested her palm over his chest. And the world will know who mended mine. They stood in silence, each heartbeat mingling with the soft rush of wind. Then she leaned forward and kissed him again, slower than before, unhurried, confident. His hands framed her waist, pulling her close. A hum of magic passed between their skins, a recognition older than language, older even than dragon song. Days unfurled into weeks. Aelira learned the wild trails around the mountain, gathered herbs to dry in the cavern, and painted images on the stone walls. The day she arrived, the dawn after the storm, the villagers' awestruck faces, golden veins of healing light. Kaelen delighted in watching her reclaim the world one brushstroke at a time. Sometimes he lay beside her in dragon form, wings folded, while she laughed and flicked paint onto his scales. Other times, they walked the ridgelines and he showed her constellations no mortal chart possessed. In quiet evenings, they spoke of what lay ahead. Kaelen planned journeys beyond the horizon, realms where ancient libraries held tablets older than mountains. Aelira wanted to collect songs, to hear how other peoples wove tales of grief and hope into music. They agreed to travel together come spring, once thaw unclasped the high passes. Winter arrived in silver whisper. Snow mantled the ledges, smoothing the broken stones where she had nearly died months before. One twilight, Aelira stood at that very place, gazing at the drift where her tears had once mingled with rain. Kaelen landed beside her in scaled glory, his wingbeats stirring diamonds of snow around them. What do you see, Maudiri asked. The place I ended, she said softly, and the place I began. He lowered his great head until one luminous eye met hers. Will you ride with me? She smiled and reached to grasp the ridge of scales at his neck. He crouched, and with graceful ease she swung astride, settling against the warm curve where his shoulders met strong wing joints. He leapt, wings catching the twilight wind, and the earth dropped away. Cold air whipped her cloak, but she felt only exhilaration. They soared higher, carving arcs through violet sky. Stars kindled one by one like fires along a distant coast. Below them, the mountain shone, haloed by moonlight on fresh snow. Aelira's laughter rose, bright as chimes. Kaelen roared in joyous answer, the sound not of terror but of newfound life. And somewhere far beneath, in a village hushed by winter, folk told quieter stories of dragons, stories of mercy and of a woman whose scars became legend not for their pain, but for the miracle of their healing. Children pressed fingers to glass, watching the sky, hoping to glimpse the shadow of wings and the flicker of scales like sunrise caught in flight. Above the clouds, Aelira pressed her cheek to warm obsidian scales. "I'm flying," she whispered. Kaelen's voice thundered around her, yet carried the softness of a vow. "You were always meant to fly." They rode the wind until stars blurred with dawn, until fear was only a memory, and the world at last seemed vast enough to hold the promise between a dragon and the woman who taught him to hope again.